specifically about debate because debate takes more prep, especially, and it's something that you can start working on now if you want to go to the October tournament, because it's going to take you a little bit of time to put a case together. And if you're going to work with a partner, it's going to take a little bit even more time, just because you kind of have to like find your partner and then find ways to work with each other. So I kind of want to talk about the different kinds of debate, and then I want to talk about how you would start constructing that case so that you can kind of get your bearings and get started. So as I go, if any of my varsity members, so my experienced members that have been with the team, want to unpause themselves and like come in and talk, like butt into what I'm saying and add to it or correct me or whatever, please feel free, because it's helpful to hear from more than just one person. Okay, so there are 3 types of debate, but as a team, we only do 2. And the biggest reason I only do the 2 is because the third one is, it's a full year topic and it's really involved, and it almost gets to the point where it's just not fun. So, and it's hard to teach to a club. So that's why I kind of stick more with public forum and Lincoln Douglas. So the one that I'm talking about is policy debate. And, you know, if you get on the team and you do this for a year or so and you decide that you want to try policy, I'm not going to tell you no, but it's definitely not something that I advocate right now. So let's talk about Lincoln Douglas first, because Lincoln Douglas is a little bit more, it's just a different kind of debate than public forum. So with Lincoln Douglas, you have one person against one person. So you do it by yourself. And on your screen, you should see the topics. Actually, let's go up here. So what ends up happening is the National Speech and Debate Association, and that's who comes up with all of our topics. That's who has basically the rules that we follow, in addition to MSHA rules, because we are MSHA sanctioned, so we have to abide by their rules. You guys have to qualify for MSHA just like you would in any like sport or band or color guard. Like you have to have a certain grade point average, and you have to, you know, your attendance has to be good. So anyway, so the NSDA is basically our governing body, and they're the ones that come up with topics. So you'll see on your screen that Lincoln Douglas has a September, October topic that we actually will not debate because our MSHA season runs from October to March. And since we won't start until the end of October, we as a coaching staff in the area, and I'm going to say St. Louis just because it's mostly St. Louis, but the coaching staff has decided that there's no point in having you guys prep a case for one weekend and then have to change topics for November and December. So you see the September, October topic. We won't even debate that. What you guys are going to be debating for the rest of this semester is the November, December topic. And that is that resolve the United States ought to provide a federal jobs guarantee. So I could get into that and talk about that, but I'm going to jump up to the September, October topic, just because I think that one is something we can easily talk about right now without you guys having to do some research. So what happens with Lincoln Douglas is you have to look at the topic as a value. What do we value the most in our democracy that will help us get to this point? So you will have to argue affirmative and negative, which means for and against. You'll have to write a case for both. So if we look at the resolved in a democracy, voting ought to be compulsory. First thing you have to do is figure out, what do these words even mean? And not necessarily just by definition, but what do they mean to society? What do they mean to a reasonable group of people? What do they mean to government versus what do they mean to the everyday citizen? So that's kind of where debate gets, that's where you start to clash with people, because you have to set definitions in your debate. And if you find a definition that works really well for what you're trying to argue, then that's what you're going to stick with. So the very first word that I'm going to look up is compulsory, because I want to know what the general definition of that is. And a very quick definition on Google says it's required, mandatory, obligatory. And I think you're going to find that that's a pretty common definition for people. But as you're reading and you're looking into the topic, you may come across a different definition that works better for you, and you are welcome to use that. The affirmative is the side that really sets the definitions. So when you are the affirmative and you're speaking first, you get to say, let me go back to the topic. In a democracy, you get to define what a democracy is. You could define it as the denotation of it is, what an actual democracy is defined as in a dictionary. Or you could say, the United States is a democracy. This is how the United States operates. Therefore, that's the definition I'm going to use in my debate. You can do that too. You just have to be prepared that the other side would come back at you and say, okay, yeah, that might be true that the United States is a democracy, but there are other democracies that don't necessarily operate the way the United States does. So therefore, we're going to use my definition of democracy. And that's where some of the clash comes in. Does that make sense? Okay. So you are going to define some terms, but don't feel like you have to define everything. Like, you don't have to define in a resolved, voting, you don't have to define those words. You're going to see that some inexperienced debaters will. You are going to want to focus on the big key terms. So we're going to look at this and try to determine, how do I want to argue this? Well, the best thing that you can do is go out and do all the research that you can find. How would we make it required? And then you have to look at all the nuances of what that would look like. If we're going to make voting required, how do we help people that can't make it to the polls? How do we help people that are in the hospital? How do we help people that are in prison? Because you have to argue the topic for what's stated here. So as a negative, I might say, look, I don't think it should be compulsory because I don't think felons should get to vote. And it says that it ought to be compulsory. It doesn't say what age. It doesn't say that it's 18 or older. It doesn't say 15. It just says that it should be compulsory. So there's lots of different things that you have to look at what's not being stated, as well as what's stated in the resolution. And that's where you're going to start to find the clash, where when you're arguing with the other person, you have your thoughts and you're going to argue that and you're going to uphold it to the best of your ability. But you also have to listen to what the other side is telling you, and you have to argue what they're saying as well. So they're not just going to argue. They're not just going to give their case and then sit down. They're going to explain what they think, and then they're going to attack you. And you have to be able to do that with them as well. So there's two different sides of that. Okay, so that's a good question with resolved. What does resolved mean? It just means that that's our topic. Resolved. This is what we're arguing. That's literally all it means.
It's kind of like telling us what we're trying to do through debating this. We're trying to come to a resolution.
Again, if I do a real quick dictionary definition, it says resolved is to firmly do something. So if my topic is resolved, oh, darn it, I hit the wrong button. When you're sharing your screen with Chrome, there's all kinds of stuff open, and it's okay. So it's stating that in a democracy, voting ought to be compulsory. I am strictly stating that that's what it should be. So the affirmative, that's what I'm going to say. Is the negative, I'm going to say that it shouldn't be compulsory. So there are a lot of different ways that you can argue that. So here's what I mean by a value debate. So in a value debate, you have to figure out how this is going to morally affect society. So we're not just looking at, should it be compulsory? We're looking at, how is this going to be best for society? So if I'm affirmative and I say that voting ought to be compulsory, then I believe that for society, this is what's best. So I'm going to come up with a value. So maybe I value liberty. Maybe that's my value. And because I value liberty, or let's say freedom. Let's say that my value is freedom. Because in a Lincoln Douglas debate, you have to have a value. And that's what your case is completely centered around. So if my value is freedom, I'm going to say that every single American has freedom. Every single American has the freedom to choose and make a choice. Every single American has the freedom to make decisions. And therefore, every single American has the freedom to vote. I value freedom among everything else. So that's what I'm going to argue. Now, if I'm the negative, and I'm going to argue that in a democracy, voting shouldn't be compulsory, then I'm going to say that I value fairness. And for fairness, it's not fair that convicted felons get to vote. It's not fair that a 9-year-old gets the same voting power that an 18-year-old does. So I value fairness. So even if the affirmative, and I agree with the affirmative, when they say that it's freedom, that every American has freedom, I can agree with their value, but it's not as good as my value. My value is the most important. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's Lincoln Douglas in a nutshell. Now, in the past, I'm going to offer the best. I'm trying to pull something up so I can show it to you. I try to help you with research as much as I can, but it's hard when not knowing what you know and not being able to have you in class makes it a little difficult. So I'm going to show you this link. Okay, so a brief, you're going to hear us talk about briefs. We're not talking about underwear. A brief is a document that has gobs of research on it about the topic. So what I'm showing you right now is a free version of briefs. Good briefs are expensive, $300 to $400 a piece. This one's free. This one is available to you right now. And I'm going to put the link in the chat. Now, don't feel like you have to go in and print this, because if you want a copy of this, I will copy it for you. I think when I printed it was like 40 pages. If you are one of my virtual students and you want a copy of this, let me know and I'll drop it off at your house. I will make copies and drop it off at your house. So just send me an email. So let me just kind of show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to tell you the really good news. So here is, and I'm looking at Lincoln Douglas first because that's what we're talking about, but we'll also take a look at public forum as well. Give me a second, it's loading. Ooh. Okay, so let me share.
It says that it's blocked.
Okay. Can you see the brief on here? Oh, wait, there it goes. Okay, you should be able to see that now. It says Premier Debate. Do you see that? Okay, so this one is about 40 pages long. It gives you kind of an introduction. There's 175 cards. We'll talk about what that means here in a minute. But here, there's a table of contents, tells you everything that's in it. And scroll down. So what they've done is they have researched this topic and they have written out sources and the most important information from that source that talks about what you're trying to argue. So compulsory voting, none. So here, right here. This is a source. So this bolded thing right here, this is called the tag. The tag just tells you what the source is talking about. So the tag on this one is there must be a legal obligation, informal pressures or incentives without formal rules do not count as compulsory voting. So if your opponent is arguing that informal pressures, okay, where we are constantly putting out commercials like urging people to vote, you know, like Key Club's got the QR code that they've got out right now, like trying to get people to register to vote. And then you see like all the commercials that are out on TV right now urging people to vote. That's all great, but that's not compulsory voting. That's not required. So what this card is saying is that there has to be a legal obligation. So it says, informal pressures are outside the scope of this study for they fall either, wait, it talks about here. This volume will define compulsory electoral participation in terms of a legal obligation to participate in elections. Okay. Then it goes through informal pressures are outside of the scope of this study for they fall either in the category of social structural detriments of electoral participation or if they take the form of coercion in the category of electoral malpractice. So this may or may not be helpful for you, but if it is, then you can look up here and you see that it's a very credible source. It's got the date, and I'm going to tell you that if you use a card in your debate, you have to give the source and you have to give the date. It's all listed right there for you. And your opponents will ask for it. Hang on. I just saw chat. Yep, that's exactly what you want to do, Brett. Okay, so you can go through and kind of read through these cards, and you'll see as you get more familiar with the briefs and you get more familiar with the topic, this stuff will make more sense. So like here's some stuff for the affirmative. Compulsory voting unequivocally increases turnout. This might be a point that you make. Compulsory voting increases turnout rates by 7 to 16%. Do you see how this is research and how it will specifically help your case? I'm hoping you do. Most of you, yeah. So, okay, so here's the good news. These are free. These are anybody's open to these. Like I said, they're expensive and we don't really have a budget. So we did a fundraiser last year. We sold Christmas ornaments and we made like $600 and it was amazing. And I really want to do it again this year. But we don't have a ton of money. So I asked Mr. Nelson if he would pay for them, and he said yes. So I am in the process of getting a really reputable, great source in the into our system so that we can purchase them and have them for the upcoming topic. It takes about a week to get that done, but as soon as we get them paid for, I will email everybody a copy of the briefs that we have, and then we'll get a brief for every single topic that comes out this school year. So that will help you. The other thing that's cool about briefs that you pay for is that they will actually give you some sample debate cases that you can look at and kind of use and tweak for yourself if that's what you want to do. You don't have to use them. And I would almost argue that you want to write your own just because you want to own your case. But it'll at least give you some kind of an idea of what to include. So does this kind of help explain Lincoln Douglas? Yeah, Saruthi, I can see you. Does this help? Okay, good. Colin says yes. Connor says yes, sorry.
Can I add something?
Okay, so I'm seeing a question. Okay,
Hello?
so do you research both sides for and against, but you don't? No, okay, so Megan, and that's a really good question. So she asks, do you research both sides, but you only debate one side, the actual debate? No. So here's how debates work. Normally at a tournament, you would debate. I can't hear you, Saruthi.
Can you hear me now?
Nope. She'll come back. So at a debate tournament, what'll happen is you'll argue 2 times for and 2 times against. So those are called preliminary rounds. So you argue 2 times for, 2 times against. You want to try it now?
Can you hear me now?
Nope.
I can hear you.
I can hear you too.
Do you have a window in your room? Just open it. Oh, you can?
Yeah, I can hear Stuart.
Oh, so I'm the one that doesn't have to.
Yeah, I've been like talking to you. I don't think you've heard me.
I can hear it too. Do you maybe have like your computer muted or something? Well, I guess if you're hearing us, then it's not muted. Unless you can't hear me.
I don't think she can hear you, Amanda.
Well, I might have found the problem.
Miss Frankie, can you hear us?
I don't think she can.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Now I can hear. Why can I hear you on my phone but not on the computer?
I don't know. Is your computer muted? Weird.
No. Am I echoing?
No.
Okay. Well, this is what we're going to do. Let me put you guys on the speaker. Hang on. Okay. Well, we'll just do that.
All right. I was
didn't
gonna say. What?
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I was gonna say that. So kind of like structurally, Lincoln Douglas and Public Forum kind of have the same beginning. So someone will go first and someone will go second, like each side, affirmative and negative. And your first time you speak, it'll have like your introduction, and then you'll have 2 to 4 contentions, which are like your main points. If you've like ever written an essay, it's like your 3 claims in your thesis, like your 3 main points. And under those 3 main, mostly it's 3, but under those main points, you'll have your evidence and like what you're trying to say. And in LD, like we just talked about, those will all connect to your value criterion. And so one very important thing that a lot of us messed up our freshman year was if your opponent, like you have to debate all of their contentions. Like if they have 3 contentions and you only respond to 2 of them, that means that you agreed with the third one, and they will use that and say, since they didn't debate it, they agree with me. So that's where having the most amount of research you can will help you, because even if you haven't researched something thoroughly, especially with LD, you can use the idea of like values to like make sure that you're refuting every single thing they say. So contentions are a really big deal in both debates because they're kind of like the structure of your entire argument.
And so, tagging off what Saruthi said, that's why the briefs are so helpful, because you have no idea what they're going to say to you. So if they bring something up, you can be like, oh, wait, I have a brief that completely debates what, like, negates what they said. So you pull that bad boy out, then you read that in your rebuttal. So that's why, like, doing your own research is great. And I'm not going to tell you to only use the briefs, because you're going to find so much more research, like on EBSCOhost and on Facts on File and all of the research that you know how to do. You're going to find really good stuff. But having those briefs are going to help you in your rebuttals. Okay, so Saruthi talked about the structure of debate, and so I'll talk about what public forum is here in a second, but this is kind of a good segue is what the case actually looks like. So unlike an essay, So like in essay writing, you don't want to be like deliberate. You don't want to say this quote shows this, or my first point is this. Like you don't want to do that in an essay. But in debate, that's exactly what you want to do. You have a judge that is listening to you. You don't know that person from Adam. So you have to tell them exactly what it is that you want them to think, how you want them to vote, and what you want them to write down on their piece of paper. So I think this is posted on the classroom, and I'll double check and make sure that it is. If it's not, I'll post it. But this is an outline that you can use to help you build a case. So you're literally going to come in and give an introduction. So you're just going to give a real quick, like 20-second introduction. And it might be good for you to watch a couple like sample rounds. And I've got some videos posted on the classroom. But you'll kind of see like what a real quick introduction is. And then you'll say, I stand affirmed, resolved, and then you give the topic. If you are against it, you say, I negate the resolution, and then you say the topic. Then if you define any of your terms, that's where you're going to go in and define your terms, and you're going to say, this is what I say democracy is, this is what compulsory is, or whatever it is that you feel that you need to define. And if you have a topic where you don't feel the need to define stuff, then you can just say, I don't feel the need to define anything, or however you want to say that. Then in Lincoln Douglas, you would go in and say, my value for today's debate is X. This is why I feel that this is the most important value. Maybe you define that value, depends on what value you're using. Then you have a value criteria, which we'll talk more about value criteria specifically when we start looking at Lincoln Douglas and who's going to do Lincoln Douglas versus Puff. But your criteria is basically, we have to achieve X before we can get to the value. So your value criteria for this particular topic might be, we have to achieve 100%, or we have to achieve totality, right? So 100% of America has to vote for this to be considered achieved. All right, then you go into your body, and this is where you say, I have three main contentions in today's debate. Contention literally just means a main point. I have 3 points in today's debate. There we go. Okay, so contention 1. Then you give your tag. Every single voter, every single American must be heard to ensure a proper election. Then you go in and you explain in your own words what you mean by that, and then you need to have some proof, some source that backs you up and explains why what you're saying is true. So, and you can have 2 or 3 sources, you can have 1 source, it doesn't matter. I mean, the more you have, the better, but you also want to make sure that your case is more of your speaking than the research speaking. Then, so you go through and you talk about your first contention. Contention 2. Then you give what your contention is, you give a little tagline, you tell the judge what you want them to hear, you give them the research, you give them the proof. And then if you have a third contention, you can do a third contention. I wouldn't do any more than 3 just because it becomes too much. And if you're trying to do too much and, your 6 minutes or 4 minutes, depending on what speech you're giving, you're going to run out of time and you're not going to effectively argue your point. So I would say no fewer than 2 contentions and no more than 3. Then in your conclusion, this is where you're going to sum up what you've said. And again, this is different than writing an essay, because in writing an essay, you have to have like style and poise, and you can't say things like, in conclusion, all of my 3 main points are important because of this. But in debate, that's exactly what you should be doing. So it's almost kind of easier to write because you don't have to worry about that style. Okay. So, Saruthi, does that kind of sum it up? Yeah, okay. Yes, Brett.
Do you want to pull up the timings?
I will in a
LD?
second. Yeah, I will in a second. Brett says, can your sources be logical reasoning like induction, deduction, and abduction? You better believe it. Absolutely. And that's what a lot of your stuff is going to be. And you can even say logically thinking, judge, it's not logical to say that 100% of people are going to be able to vote. You're going to have, what are you going to do about the people that died yesterday? Like, technically, they're supposed to vote, right? Because they're on the election card or the election roster. Like, logically speaking, it's not possible. What about those people that are in a vegetative state in a coma, right? They're still alive, but they can't vote. That's logical reasoning. So sometimes you can poke holes just by doing that. All right.
I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
On the NSDA website, for the Lincoln Douglas debate topics, it says there's a novice topic. What's that?
Okay, so the novice topic, some states use that as a way to kind of get kids used to debating. We don't use that.
Okay.
Yeah, Missouri doesn't use that one. That's a good question, though. Okay, so then Cerruti hang on, I'm trying to do 3 different things at once here. All right, so Cerruti brought up the time aspect. So Lincoln Douglas is a phone number. So the way this works is the affirmative always speaks first in Lincoln Douglas. The affirmative speech is going to be 6 minutes long, and it should be typed, printed, and you're going to read it. You don't have to memorize anything. So don't feel like you have to oh my gosh, I got to write my case and then I got to memorize it. They do not expect you to memorize anything. I would strongly recommend that you try not to work off of your computer at a debate. Okay, now I say that, but we're virtual, so you're going to have to work off your computer. But in a typical round, it's better if you just have your papers in front of you, because you're going to be writing things as they're talking, and however it is that you best take notes, you're going to figure out the style once you get going. But to start with, I would have a printed out copy of your speech, because your opponent may ask to see it, and that's I'm going to tell you in good faith, let them see it if they want to see it. Some coaches would say never, don't give it up, but you've got nothing to hide. You've done all the research. It's legit. It's sound. If they want to see it, let them see it, whatever. I don't know what that's going to look like in the virtual. I don't know that that's really been decided yet. So we'll kind of play that by ear. So that 6 minute speech is completely read. You literally stand up, you read it. Then you have a cross-examination period. So this is when the negative can stand up and ask the affirmative any question they want. It may be questions of clarification, like, well, you said this in your first contention. Can you repeat that because I didn't get it? Or what did you mean by X, Y, and Z? Or maybe you're going to try to catch them in a loophole, or you're trying to confuse them. You can ask any question that you want. Just make sure that you are poised and tactful and you don't attack them. Cross-examination is never a place for you to make an argument. It is strictly a place for you to ask questions. Then you have a 7 minute speech, and this is where the negative gets to give their constructive. And so as a negative, your case should be about 4 minutes long, because the negative case, you don't really get to define anything unless you're going to define your value, because you need to explain that. But for the most part, you want to try to just go off of what the affirmative has said are their definitions. Don't get too caught up on definitions. It's not that big of a deal, and you'll kind of get a feel for it as you go. But in that first 4-ish minutes, you're going to read your case. Literally, you're just going to read the case. And then the other 3 minutes, you're going to rebut what they said. So you're going to go back to their case. So you will have written down their contentions and their main points. And then you will say, in response to their contention 1, they said this, say what they said. This is why it's wrong. And then you may have to just use logic or deduction, or you may have a card from the brief that you can pull up and say, this is how they're wrong. Contention 2, they said X, Y, and Z. This is how they're wrong. Contention 3, they said X, Y, and Z. This is how they're wrong. Then you're going to take everything that they've said and you're going to apply it to your case. And you're going to say, look, none of this has anything to do with my value of this. It goes completely against everything that the resolution is standing for. It goes against everything that I am arguing. I've explained to you how they are wrong. Here's the research that shows it. Please vote for me. That's what that first speech is going to be, as a negative. Then the next 3 minutes are a cross-examination. Now the affirmative is going to stand up and ask the negative question. This is not a back and forth. This is not affirmative asks the question, negative asks the question. You are seeing there specifically answering questions from your opponent. All right, so once all that's done, then the affirmative, it's a rebuttal, and they're going to argue everything that you just argued against them. So, well, they said this against my case, and here's how it's wrong. They said this against my case, and here's how it's wrong. Then they're going to argue the negative side, and they're going to say, this is what the negative said, this is how it's wrong. So you have to be very deliberate and explain to the judge, this is exactly how they said it, and this is why they're wrong. Then for the next 6 minutes, the negative gets a rebuttal. They do the same thing that the affirmative just did in the 4 minutes. And then the last 3 minutes, the affirmative is basically summing up everything that was said. So I'm putting this on there. You can have new arguments in any of the speeches except your last 2 speeches, because it's not fair to the other side that they won't get a chance to argue it. So if it, as the affirmative, you're the affirmative, and the negative brought up a new argument in that 6-minute speech, you should say, listen, judge, they made a brand new argument, and which isn't even allowed, because I don't get a chance to argue that, right? I can't bring up new evidence. Or I can't bring up new argument or new points to negate that, because it's not fair. You can bring up new evidence to an argument that's already been posed, but you cannot bring up brand new arguments in your last speech. So that's all Lincoln Douglas. That's all by yourself. So let's talk about public forum. The public forum, I think you do, but if you don't, so the question was, do you have access to this document? I think you should have access to it. If you don't, I'll make sure that it's in the classroom. So Megan, the affirmative side, when I'm looking at this topic here, okay, so I'm looking at this topic that I just highlighted. The affirmative is for the topic. I say that the United States ought to provide a federal jobs guarantee. If I'm negative, I argue that the United States should not provide a federal jobs guarantee. That's it. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's a good question. How do I know which one I'm going to argue? So at the tournament, they will post a schedule, and the schedule will tell you this round you are going to be affirmative or negative. You go into the room, you're prepared to be that side. After that round, you go to the schedule again, and it will tell you if you're affirmative or negative, and then you argue that. Because you're debating 4 times, you will debate 2 times affirmative and 2 times negative. So if you are debating negative your first 2 rounds, your second 2 rounds you'll be affirmative both times. Those are called the preliminary rounds. If you advance, if you do really well and you get to go into quarterfinals, that's the top 8 people in the round or in the tournament. You guys will flip a coin. And then whoever wins the coin flip will decide who's going to be affirmative or negative. So does that help with LD?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So Brett says, does each preliminary round count for points? Okay. So here's how the NSBA works. So you get, once you earn 25 points, you can then become an NSBA member. We have 13 NSBA members. Last year we had 0. So last year everybody qualified. Last year was our first year in the NSBA. 13 people qualified. You get points for every single round that you participate in. If you win a round, you get 6 points. If you lose a round, you get 3 points. When you do events, you also get points in events. So if you take first place in a round, you get 6 points. Second place, you get 5 points. Third place, you get 4 points, and it keeps going down from there. But every single time that you compete in a round, you will get points. It is very possible for you to get 25 points in your first tournament if you win every round, or if you debate and you do events. So if you do two tournaments, you could probably earn your points. Okay, let's talk about public forum. The public forum, here we go. So public forum is 2 people against 2 people. You guys get to pick your partner. There are some coaches that will place people with their partners. I'm not going to do that. I want you to find somebody that you work well with and someone that you could work with. So public forum, the topics change every 2 months. So for September and October, we are arguing healthcare. So the October the October topic is that the federal government should enact the Medicare for All Act of 2019. And then the November-December topic is the U.S. should adopt a declaratory nuclear policy of no first use. I have to double check because I think the October tournament, they're going to let us use the November topic, but the coach did not put that in the invitation. So I'm going to email him and clarify. I cannot imagine that he would make us debate the October topic, but I don't know for sure. So I'll know for sure. I'll find out this week. So this one, you do not argue value. You literally argue the topic for what it is. So this is a little different. The format is a little bit different in time. So in public forum, is it 8 minutes, Ruthie? It's 4. 5. I can't remember. Gonna look it up. I feel like it's 4. She's gonna look, but I'm pretty sure it's 4. Let's see.
Are you talking about for the introduction?
No, I'm talking about for the whole.
Okay, so it's 4 Crossfire 3, 4
Yeah.
Crossfire 3, 2 Grand Crossfire 3, and then 2.
Okay. Okay. So here's how it looks, and this is kind of wonky because I missed the 4, didn't I? Okay, so here's what happens. You walk into a public forum room. You don't know what side you're going to argue. You walk a coin. You and your partner are standing over here, and the other team is standing over here. One of you flips a coin, and you guys will decide in the round who calls it. Whatever. You flip the coin. You call heads or tails. The person that wins, the team that wins, gets to decide if they are affirmative or negative, or if they speak first or second. So this is a little different than Lincoln Douglas, because in Lincoln Douglas, you already know what you're arguing, what side you're arguing, and you always go in the format that is posted here. So affirmative will always speak first and negative will always speak second. Public forum is totally different. So you flip the coin. So let's say that I'm from one school and Saruthi's from the other school. I decide that I want to be affirmative. I win the coin toss, and I say that I want to be affirmative. So then Saruti's team gets to decide if they want to be the second speaker. So I'm going to be affirmative. And Saruti's team decided that they wanted to be second speaker. So that's what's going to happen. So I'm trying to think of the best way to show, because this is really. Okay. So Red is the name of my competitor. So Red gets to give a speech. He is the first speaker. He has 4 minutes, and he's going to give all of his information. He is going to basically use the exact same format as what's up here. The only difference between this and LD is that there is no value. You're literally just looking at facts and you're arguing the facts. Then there's a 3-minute questioning period. Square gets to ask Red the question, all the questions he wants. Then there's a 4-minute question or 4-minute speech where Square then gets to give a speech. Now he is the first speaker and he is negative. Brett, do you mean both types of debate? Okay, so you can, but not at the same tournament. So you could do LD at one tournament and Puff at another. That's your call. Okay, so here we have, so these 3 minutes are crossfires, questioning period. Okay. So that's the first chunk. Then the second chunk is blue and circle. So that's a whole nother chunk. So this is one chunk. This is the next chunk. All right. Then there's a 2-minute, each person gets a 2-minute rebuttal, and they go in the same order of speakers. So it was red, square, blue, circle. Now it's red, square, blue, circle. So you don't change speaker positions. And then the 3 minutes is called the grand crossfire. And this is where everyone gets to ask questions. It can get a little hairy. There's 4 people wanting to ask questions. Okay, so this is its own kind of chunk. Does that make sense? All right. Ruthie, do you want to add anything to that about the structure and kind of what am I missing?
I think the main thing with Puff is that it's like a lot about facts. So this one, it's a lot more important to have all of your research done. And one thing that like I took away from Puff was that each time after you do a debate, you like really like you want to analyze what the other side did, because then you can use their strengths to fix your case. Because if you did affirmative one time and negative the next time, you're going to do negative at some point, unless it's like the last debate. So to take their strengths and try to implement them into your own case on the fly, obviously. But that's going to help you, especially if it's your first time, because a lot of what you learn from speech and debate